npm install Oh, do you hear me? Oh, I guess I do have a mic then.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right. So far it's just me and you. Looks like. So trying to get some other people in here before we get started.
All right.
So. Who else? Guess there's not many people online right now.
Looks like someone's about to log in. Alonzo?
All right. Okay, awesome. So, well, 3 of us. Yep. So that's a start. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So, Alonzo, can you hear us? Okay. The chat's on the side there, so I don't know if you have it pulled up yet.
Down here. I wish there was.
All right, so if you open up the chat, Alonzo, and just let us know if you can. Oh, okay, gotcha. His wife called.
Oh.
All right, Alonzo, you want us to just hold on for you? All right, so real quick, Tiffany, what do you have you looked at React at all yet, or no?
No, I haven't looked at it. I had a chance to.
Okay, and then how about like the SASS stuff? Have you looked at that or worked with any of that before?
No.
Okay.
I just have it on here. Like you said, to fork it and install npm. I just did that.
Okay. Did you get that running the npm start, and then were you able to get that running without any issues? Okay, that's good. All right, that's good. Yeah, so I set up the whole dev environment there. We can change it. It's just kind of what I was picturing. I didn't really have a lot of inputs. So I guess when I asked, most people were offline, whatever. But so I kind of just went went and just picked a couple things and went with it. So if we need to change anything, we can. I got bootstraps in there. The SASS is in there. You can use regular CSS with SASS. So a lot of the stuff just looks the same. And I'm not like great with SASS. Like I use it, but I'm not like, you know, I'm not like an amazing person with it.
Right. Yeah.
It can be pretty simple. Basically, you can do a couple things. I'll show you here. Maybe actually I think Alonzo didn't know SASS either, but I can just go ahead and show you anyway. Let's see here. Where am I at? All right. So let's do. All right. So are you used to regular CSS? You know regular
Yeah,
CSS, right?
regular
Okay.
CSS.
So if you did, like if you wanted to have all divs, font size, whatever, let's say 16 pixels or something. And then inside your div, maybe you would have, maybe you have a div, but then you have an H1 element, and then maybe you want to make that color red, the font red. So you had that. Well, in SASS, what you can do is you can kind of put that inside of it and get rid of this right there. So then what that'll do is the same thing we just had. So it's basically any H1s inside of the div, it'll put red. So it basically you can nest the different styles inside of each other.
Right.
And then if you had like a link tag, and it had whatever, maybe it was color blue or something, but then you wanted to change it for like a if it's already been visited, what you would do is you would do the ampersand sign, and then whatever it is, so maybe visited, and then you do color. I don't know. Purple, yeah, that's fine. So you can nest that, and so that ampersand kind of pulls that back down into it, so you can, without having to type it, type the A again, and so you can nest that inside of there. So it's really simple stuff. You can also do like variables, things like that. And if you go to sasslang.com, I'll throw that in the chat area here. That's sass-lang.com. I just sent it there. That's the page, and it has an install and learn, but you don't need to install it because it's already in the build that we have. And you can do variables, and variables you might use like you do in Bootstrap, or like if you want to specify all your colors at the maybe at the top of your file or something. Maybe you want to do you use the $, and then whatever you want to maybe do primary color, and then you would pick your color. Maybe we do something I don't know, like 555. I would just put whatever. That's gray. I don't want gray. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, we'll just leave it gray. So you can set them and then use them later on. So then down here, maybe we want this to be the primary color. So then you do primary color there, and so you'd only ever need to change that in this one spot.
Okay.
And so we have that, and you can, if you look at the Bootstrap documentation, you can also change the stuff. I use the SASS Bootstrap version since we're doing the SASS. Normally, I believe Bootstrap is less, but since we went with SASS, I went ahead and did the SASS implementation of it. And so you can change those settings to like the colors. There's like, I think primary color is one of them or something like that, or primary brand or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can change those. I think they got to be, I think there's an order to it, so you might just have to play around if you want to change those.
Yeah.
I can't remember because normally I set it once and then I'm done for the project. But yeah, that's basically out. So we just had somebody else pop in.
That'd be me. If you can hear me, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
I'm simple.
Okay. So we were going over SASS right now. Do you have any experience with SASS?
I do not.
No? Okay, so just real quick, if you take a look at the screen, basically I went over that you can make variables with it. Up at the top there you have the $sign and then a word.
Yep.
That's your variable, and you can assign it colors. You could assign it other things like fonts or whatever. It could be whatever.
Yeah, I'd seen that in the Bootstrap docs. I just never knew how to use them.
Yeah, so and then that's the SASS version. So there, you can do the same thing in Less, but we're using SASS. And then the other thing you can do in SASS is you can see how we have nested styles. Like one is inside of the div, and so that's just going to do pretty much what it looks like. It's going to make all H1s the primary the text the primary color that are inside div. So if there's an H1 inside a div, then it'll be the text color will be that primary color that we set. So it's just you can nest things, and like the anchor tag there, the A, we have the ampersand visited. That's just the ampersand is just a way to say A again. It could be anything. We could have had div ampersand hover. You can do that for all the different ones. So those are the things I normally do with it. I don't normally get too much more advanced than that. Maybe like import statements and things like that. But we can do all our imports through JavaScript in the React. Well, not really in the React, but with the Webpack part, which we'll go over in a minute. Which I'm still getting used to Webpack myself. So I don't. Do any of you have any experience with Webpack?
I don't.
Okay. So, did you have any? I'm sorry, I'm bad with name. Where's I lost your name on here.
Sorry, where are you talking to me?
Yeah, simple, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Did you have any experience with Webpack?
No. That's why I'm here. I have no experience with any of that.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So nothing at all, right?
Just basic HTML and CSS, really.
Okay. All right, yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel, and I'm probably gonna, forget what you all tell me, but hopefully not. You can do other things too with the SASS stuff, and if you look through the documentation, it's all really pretty straightforward. I don't really do too much advanced stuff, so it may be better to look at the documentation. If you want to do some more advanced stuff. There's things like mix-ins. I think I looked at them before, but I've never actually done anything with them. What else? I'm trying to scroll through here real quick. You can do like basic math and like different operators. But I mean, most of it, what I use is what I'm showing you right there. So that's for the styling part. I don't know really if anybody has a preference, who wants to do like the CSS stuff, and who wants to or the SASS stuff, and who wants to work on the React stuff, or if we want to kind of just all do everything still. So any questions on the SASS stuff?
All good for me.
Nope, looks good.
Okay, I just wanted. I figured that one was quick, so we just kind of knocked that out of the way. So you see real quick. You see the extensions .scss.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think there's a couple different extensions you can use. I think you can use SASS. Anyway, so I'm going to delete this because we're not actually using that. Let's go to the Webpack stuff, because that'll probably be a little. It's kind of important to how we're doing the React stuff. I could probably show you the React stuff without it, but let's go ahead and look at the Webpack stuff. So this is the config file, the Webpack config.js file. And if you don't understand this all, that's okay, because I only understand it like when I'm looking it up. But real quick, we're importing. We're requiring like an HTML Webpack plugin, which generates our HTML templates. So that's why we don't have to write any HTML technically. Like we don't have to come up with like an index.html page because it'll generate it. And where it generates it at is down in the plugin section. You'll see we have a new HTML Webpack plugin, and then it'll say the template, which they give us an index template. That's another plugin I'm using, and then we just give it a title, and then the AP mount ID is where I'm attaching the React to, and so basically that's where I'm stuffing all the React components into. So you can just kind of, what it does is it just makes basically a div there. I think it's a div or some element with an ID of whatever you put there, which so we have app. So it's just a way that I don't have to write any HTML and I can start shoving React into it. Does anybody have any questions about the HTML generation?
No.
Nope.
All right, so we also have jQuery if we need to use it. We're doing some linting. I don't know if we need to go over that right now. We're using Babel and ES6, so I don't know if anybody has any ES6 experience. Mine is kind of minimal. I'm using some of the different ways to do functions, which I'll show you when we start doing the React stuff in a minute here. And then pretty much everything in here, they're called loaders. They just are the different processors, and those are, if you go to the package.json, you can see all the dev dependencies, and so you'll see some of those are loaders. They're just what we're using to do things. So if you ever have a question on how something's working, or you want to, like, if you need to dive into it more, just come in here, look up what the loader is, and then Google that, and then go look at the docs. And normally it's like, not really hard. Normally you can just find, if you need to figure out the SASS loader, you can go look that up. Or if you need to figure out the templates, maybe you need to make a template for another page, you want to have it generate another page, you can go to the search HTML Webpack template. You really probably otherwise don't need to mess with the package.json file. It's just there's some scripts in there. Well, actually, let's go over that real quick. So everybody's done the npm install, right?
Yep.
Simple, you too?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the npm start will just basically run the Webpack dev server with a few options. It does have, if you change something, it should update on the screen. I haven't added the React hot loaders yet, though, so you'll lose state if you're working with the React stuff right now. I still got to figure out how to add that. I didn't know how to do it, and I wanted to just get this out here at the time. But if you need to build for dev, maybe you don't want to run the web server, you just want to build the package for dev, you can run npm run dev, and it'll run. But we have this watch here, and it'll kind of watch your dev files, and anytime you make a change, it'll then recompile it for you. But when we want to push to production, you just use npm run build. So that's kind of just a real quick overview. Most of the stuff you're not really going to care about, except the npm start. Any questions on the package.json file?
Nope.
Nope.
So back to the Webpack one. Can everybody see my fonts, like the screen size? Is the font size? Is it okay?
Yeah, I see it. It's fine.
Yeah,
I forgot to ask earlier. And color's okay. I don't need to change my colors or anything.
Nope.
No, color's good.
All right. I should have asked earlier. Sorry about that. Real quick, the entry point on this is where it's looking and where it starts to compile from. So it's going to look at, well, first it's pulling the bootstrap stuff in, but after that it goes to the index. And I gave it the context of up above. If you see context, directory name plus app, this points to just the app folder inside there. And if real quick we do ls, you can see the structure of the folder. It's app, node modules, which is where all the packages get installed to, and then the config files and the README. So the app is where all your source is. So if you look at the structure right now, you have components folder and an index.jsx. So with the context here, we're just saying that's where that is in that folder. And then so this is pulling index, and it's going to be any index it could be index.js, could be index.jsx. I have it set down here in extensions to pull either one. output just it's gonna output to a distribution the dist folder that stands for distribution, and it's gonna output to the bundle.js for the JavaScript file, and then any index files or HTML files like the index file index.html, it'll output that as well, and any like Bootstrap specific stuff will also get output, like the fonts. I think like they have the icon font things or whatever they're called. That'll get pushed out too in case we need to use that. If we don't need it, you don't necessarily have to copy that stuff over to the server, but it's there. And then this really all is just JavaScript though, right here. So if you see, it's all just a big object with other little objects and arrays with just fields. And the way you can figure out how if you need to change any of this stuff is just look up Webpack and just look through their documentation or search online. Sometimes the Webpack documentation sucks, so I'm still learning it. Yeah, that's it for the Webpack config. Unless there's any questions, I think that pretty much covers that config section of it up.
Okay.
Really, that's really it for Webpack, because you don't really, everything's set up as scripts. You don't really need to know much there. So I guess we can jump into the React stuff. So what do we have right now? So right now in the index.jsx, which really this could have probably just been called index.js, but I think I was playing around with it. Well, no, we got JSX in it. So have either of you, or anybody in here, how many people do we have in here now?
Should be 4, including yourself. Okay.
Is Alonso on now? Is he actually
Not sure if he's actually here. Yeah, he is.
No, he said yeah.
Okay. Hey, Alonso. So has anybody messed with JSX at all? I know everybody's probably, I think, said no React, but you could have possibly used JSX elsewhere.
No.
Okay.
JSX.
Okay, so JSX is this thing that makes JavaScript look like HTML, but it's not really. So let's look at one of the components here, and I'll probably show you a little better. All right, well, we'll go ahead and change this. So this is one of the components that I made. We're just importing React, but the JSX starts here. So in this, see how we have this H1 right here? So you would think that this is, that this tag right here is just HTML, but it's actually not. What it is JSX, and every JSX tag has to have a closing tag, or it has to, I don't remember the term, but the slash right before the last angle bracket. Mm-hmm. You have to have one of those because it has to be closing. So that is a requirement. Like on the app, see there, it always has to close. So even if it's a single tag, it has to close. But otherwise, it just looks like regular HTML. When you do React, you're going to return that basically, and I'll get in that in a second. But just want to stress this one thing: where it is, there's a couple other spots that might be different, but this is the most important. If we want to add a class to this, normally just do class, and then whatever. Maybe it's I don't know. We'll do big H1 or something. Just make up something. So that's the class. That actually won't work in JSX because of the class keyword in JavaScript. So for that, you actually have to use I think it's like the DOM node names or whatever. Class, what is the class name? What's that?
Sorry, Alonso was making fun of your naming, and I agreed with him.
Oh, well, this is just for Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to the chat. I see it now. Yeah, so you have to use class name, and there will be a couple spots where you'll see that where you can't use like the actual attribute that you're looking for. You'll have to use something that's a little different. And normally what you'll do is you'll camel case it then, just like this. So you normally start out with a lowercase one, and then any ones after that, every word after that has an uppercase. But most of the other attributes are going to be just whatever they are. So if there's ID, it's going to be ID. and then there we go. Is that better naming?
I think he'd agree.
So that would be the ID tag there. So there's no funny stuff there. But so if you ever run into an instance where you're trying to add an attribute onto an HTML element and it's not working, normally it'll tell you. If you guys use like Chrome developer tools, you're in the console there. Normally React will tell you that it's not right. It's normally relatively good at figuring that. Or when you're compiling it, it'll throw an error and it'll tell you. So I found it to be pretty good at that. Okay, so let's get rid of these funny names here. So there's a couple different ways to write React stuff. So there, you see how we have here, we have the let's ignore the import for right now. That's just importing React. We have this, and we can really get rid of this right here. And this is really what it boils down to. There's class, and then app, and that's just our name, the name that I named this component. We call them components. And it extends the React.component. This is the newer way to do this, and I still don't know if I like it because JavaScript doesn't really have classes. Even though there's a class keyword, it doesn't actually, it's not really a class. And so the other way is also has class in the name, but it's a little bit different. So this is the newer way, so we probably want to try to stick with that because that might be the, that's like the preferred way from the React team. But that's something that's in ES6. So I don't know if anybody's seen the class keyword at all, but for our purposes, all you need it to look like is what's up here: class, the name that we want to, you want to name it, and then extends the React.component. And in most cases, that's what you'll be typing, and then the rest of the stuff inside of it is the other pieces. Now, the export default, that has to do with when you're importing this file, it exports this as the thing to go out. So you could write this at the bottom too. You could write export default app at the bottom of the file, like down here or something. You could do export default app, I think is what it is. Again, I don't normally use this. So, all right. So we have the return statement here. Oh, actually, so let me write the old way out real quick. The old one. So the old way of doing it, and the way I prefer, is you do var and then we do app. So this is the same thing, not exactly the same thing as above, but really close. var app equals, and then it's react dot create class. I think is what it is. Create class, right? And so what that does is the same thing, pretty much. I mean, they are different, really, but for the most part, for making these pieces, these are the two ways you would generally go about doing them. Same thing, then, it would look like this. Render. Render is just a function that gets called. So normally you'd write it like this. That's what it would look like, and then you would return. I mean, you could do whatever. You could assign values in here, like I could do var equals, and then you could do return, because whenever we're getting the return value from the render, that's actually what gets output. You can do whatever. You could do, an H1 that has the A in it. So I'll go over what that stuff means right there. But the return is just returning, and that's what's going to get rendered. So that's where you're going to put your JSX normally. You can put JSX up in variables up here. So we could have done something like, the H1 right here, instead. But just to keep it simple, I'll just leave it like that. But most of the time, a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing, especially on this site, is probably going to not be interactive. So you're probably not going to have that piece. You're just going to have render, and then you're going to have return. So does anything look unfamiliar in this section right here?
Nope.
Just these few lines, not the top portion, just the var app down.
No, that's fine.
Looks fine for me.
You
Okay,
said
sir.
Well, wait a minute. You said render is like starting, so it's just going to start and then run everything that's
Well,
into that
it's when
function?
render gets called, but render's just a function. So
Okay.
so just like any other object, we might have an object, uh, and it looks like this, and you might have had foo, and then a function, and then whatever that function was, and then you might have had another, you might have had a variable or whatever, you might have had a, and that would have been high,
Yeah.
and whatever, to keep going. So that's all this is up here. This is just your object.
Okay.
And so render is just a function on that. So
Okay.
so that's all that is. And your just return is just like your normal return.
Right.
But what happens is React calls that render when it renders the page, and it renders at different points. And that can get confusing, figuring out when things are rendering. But it may not re-render the whole page. It may just re-render parts of it, which is the beauty of it, because then it diffs it with the previous DOM. So basically, there's a virtual DOM, and it diffs the differences and only applies the changes where needed. So it can be faster it's a lot faster than normal. But that's not the best piece of React. A lot of people love that piece, but that's not really why you would use React, because there's still plenty of fast enough ways to do stuff. The big way is because you get this nice components that you can reuse. So going back into here, though, the one thing that might look strange is this A right here surrounded by the curly braces. So all that's doing is saying, output the value of A, which I had deleted it, but it was a variable up here. So equals whatever, and so it's just pulling that. The other thing we can do is these things can be given what's called props, and it's how you would enter information into them. And so if we go back to this one, we have the app here and how you'd pass in props, and props are just properties. So it's just like a property on any attribute. So if there's an H1 and you gave it a class, that's a property that you could think of. So maybe we have, I don't know, let's just call it prop1 for right now. And then you would pass in a value, and it could be whatever, and we could just say hi, and that's our prop right there, and it could be anything. And then over here, what you do then, you could do this dot props dot, is it prop1, and that would put what was ever in that prop previously from here. This right here would take this, that high string right there, and put it in here. So props are just a way to pass data in. They're immutable. You can't mutate them. Like you can't come up here and say this dot prop1 equals something. It'll throw out an error. But what you can do is use state. So before I get into state, does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. So actually, before I even get into state, so again, back up here, this is the same thing pretty much. There is some slight differences. I'm still looking into them, so I don't know if I even want to mention what they are. I think some things with, I can't remember. I think I have some links I can send over here in a minute when I find them again. Yeah, I'm not sure where they are. I'll have to, once I find them, I'll send them over. But so for me, I'm more used to this bottom one, and I think it looks a little bit more clean to me. I don't like some reason I don't like class, the word class, like the actual keyword usage. Here we're saying class, but it's not the keyword. It's a method they made or function they made. Anyway, so we can have different, just like renders a function. We can have, before I get into state, I want to go over some of this other stuff. So we can have, actually, we can introduce state here at the same time. So get initial, I think it's initial, is it what's spelled out? I don't do this every day, so give me one sec. I think it's get initial, I think, yeah, spell out the whole thing. State. So this will get the initial state, or set the initial state for us. Is it get or set? Get initial state. and then we can just put in whatever the state we want in here. So it could be, we had whatever variables basically is what we want. It'd be state 1, and then state 2, and on and on and on. And then, and that's just a that's just a function. Actually, I never write it like this, so I'm sorry. And this actually has to be in a return statement too. So it's an object. Right. So with this, you just return the object that is state. And this is just called on the initial creation of this component. So anytime you have values you're going to need to change, you're going to generally use state. You don't always use state in the component you're in, though. You might do some other stuff, and I probably don't want to get into that yet, though. I'll probably do that in a minute here. But so that's just how you set state. But you can do that with any function. Then you can make any function you need. So if you need an add function, you know what I mean? You'd make an add function. And you can pass in, whatever. And you do, right. And so you can just keep adding these things, and you just call them. So say we wanted to call it, maybe you wanted to return it here, you would do this dot and then the function. So it'd be this dot add, 1, 2, and what that's going to do is going to, have an h1 with 3 in it. So just like normal JavaScript stuff, it's all really straightforward. Anything confusing?
Nope.
Everybody good and okay. How you doing, Alonzo? Are you doing good? Okay. So this for basic components, you don't even need state. You're just going to pass in props, and a lot of the static stuff I'm thinking for the site, we're just going to pass in props, and maybe that'll probably get pulled from the the API or whatever. Or if we didn't even want it pulled from that, we could make a JSON file or something, and pull from that. That somebody just goes in maybe and edits the JSON file, and they just, here's the person's name, so I know that says name, and I edit their name. So there's different ways.
Sorry to interrupt you. Exactly for what? Like the JSON file?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you wanted to fill like some of the this dot prop stuff that I was showing you.
Yeah.
So if we were, I was just saying that's one way to pull some data in, like if we wanted to have for like the static pages. So it's just a thought. We don't have to do that. I was just kind of like throwing stuff out there. So we're not necessarily messing with JSON files yet, but
I personally love JSON, but yeah.
You love JSON? Awesome.
I love the stylistic or how it looks.
Yeah, it's
actually organized,
nice.
Unlike a lot of things.
and it makes sense, and it's really nice. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So yeah, so you could make like a config file, like if we had, say, for all the people, instead of hitting the API, maybe we just put it all in a JSON file, right next to the right next to the index file. There's a JSON file.
The database would be on the same server.
It would, but yeah, I mean, well, maybe not necessarily. But
for our purposes.
Yeah, for our purposes, but I always think that it could not be too. You know what I mean? So I always kind of just talk like that.
If it ever does not, then yeah, obviously local file would be better.
But well, yeah, and it may just be that we don't, maybe for easy editing of somebody, maybe we know, okay, well, you can just go in and edit the JSON file. We didn't need to build a whole front end for it. I'm not saying we're doing that. I'm just saying that's you know what I mean? That's a possibility for something if you for a small project. We're probably, I would assume, probably going to have that all in the front end, having it where we can go in and add users. I'm assuming. I don't know if that's been decided yet. But I think, just because we're trying to do stuff, we would probably do that. But if we were just throwing something real quick together, that could very well be. I mean, we could even have a page that actually allowed us to add people, and it would just add items to the JSON file, and then they would appear, and you didn't even really need a database then, for something real simple like that. obviously, the database is better in other cases, and so that was just an example to fill some of that stuff. But yeah, so real quick, in the returns, you have to have one top level element tag. So I can't do H1 and then I can't do H2 afterwards. And that jumped me down and everything. So I can't do that. I don't know why did I do that. I didn't like my Emmet thing here. So I can't do this. So React will throw an error right here. And the reason why is it needs to have something to contain this. It has to return just one object, one element, one DOM element. It's actually not a DOM element, at that time, when you're returning it anyway, but one object, really. I think it's an object. So if you actually look at it, JSX converts into the React classes and stuff, and so you could actually write all this without JSX if you don't like the HTML in your JavaScript look, but it's not actually HTML. So anyway, so how you would do this then is you would just wrap this in a div, and what a lot of people, one of the conventions is to put some brackets around it to kind of make it look nice, and then do that. And then so now we have this nice thing here, and then we know we need a div. Oh, and now this would work because we have it in the containing div right there. It doesn't have to be a div. It could be anything. It could be an H1. It could be whatever. Some tag that's just the primary parent of it. And then you can put whatever underneath of it. The other nice thing is, so when you start building these up and you have your pieces, you can then add other ones. So say we had a component. So this one is app, but say we had another component and it was named header. Okay, so we had a component. You'll notice these are all capital. So maybe we have one that's called header, and so we have it there, and that would call whatever var header is, or if you were doing that, the class app or class header. I'll do var right now. If we do this, I'll just leave that to our imaginations what's in there, but this would call that, and then you could pass in props here, or, you could pass in whatever, if you had a prop that needed to keep getting passed down, so you could and then to pass in, so you can pass in strings, or if you're passing in like a variable or another prop or something, just put it in the curly braces, and then you can pass things in. So it could pass in whatever that prop 1 was, I think was what we had, and then that would pass that. I think it was like high or something we had as prop 1, and that would pass it down further. And so that's kind of the thing where you're moving these props down, but nobody can really change them, and so they're immutable, and you always know if something happens, where is it at? Because we're probably changing prop 1 up in that other file. Then we'd be changing it somewhere over here, or we might be maybe it was something passed from here. Maybe it was state 1 we're passing in. So to pass in state, it's the same thing. You do this dot state, and then whatever whichever one it was, and you can name these whatever. It doesn't need to be state 1. It could be bananas. And so that would pass it down, but for the purposes of header, the header it would be this dot props dot state 1, or not the state 1. I'm sorry, but this dot props dot pass down. So it's whatever this right here is what your prop is going to be called your this dot props dot, and then it's that. One way that you can do to kind of, so say you don't know what's getting passed in, like you kind of want some type checking. You don't really have type checking in JavaScript, unless you're using something like TypeScript or it was one of the other ones. So if we go back up here maybe and actually fill this one out, we could do what is it, prop types? I think it's prop types, and then you list your prop types. So we would do what is that? It's passed down, and then that is React dot prop types dot, and then whatever it is. So that one is, let's say it's a string, okay, or it could be a function even. You can pass in functions. You can pass in objects. I don't remember. It might be spelled out. Pass down anything though. You could numbers. Whatever. Let's just say it's a string for now, though. Just keep it simple. And then so, if you ever pass something in that's not a string, in the console, when you're if you need to download for Chrome. I don't know if there's one for Firefox. I would assume, but I do everything in Chrome. There's a Chrome React DevTools, and it's like a plugin, and it lets you view like all the React pieces. But I think this will still give the error even if you're not using that. But it'll just throw up an error in the console, and it'll say React error pass down was expecting a string and you passed in a number, or whatever. I'm not exactly sure, but if you want to have it required, because maybe that's a required, maybe you always need that pass down variable, you do is required, and then it'll complain and tell you that it can't work without it. And then you just keep doing this for any ones you have. Now, you don't have to use prop types. This is just kind of for your development phase, and it kind of just helps you get your data structures down, like what you're passing back and forth, or what you're passing down, because you never pass anything back up, what you're passing down. So any questions on prop types?
No.
Does that all make sense? Am I going too fast, or?
No, it makes sense. You're good.
Okay. All right. If I'm going too fast, so just let me know, because sometimes I might do that, or sometimes I might go too slow and I might get stuck on a subject. Just say, hey, move on. So we have all this crazy code now because I'm just like typing stuff, and none of it runs because I'm leaving dots everywhere. And again, you can do all that in this class extends piece. And we may want to stick with that because that's the newer style. And I believe one of the other guys that's working with us, what is his name? I forgot. Shoot, I'm so bad with names, and I don't have our chat thing pulled up, or Slack thing pulled up, I guess. Or do I? If it is, I can't find the tab. Anyway, one of the other guys, he was showing me, he was using the class app, the class whatever extends React component. So we may want to stick with that. But so if you notice up here how I'm doing the function here, see how the render is just render, and then I got the brackets, and then I got the curly braces, and then down here we have it as the function name. So render, we'll look at render again. Render colon and then function, and etc. like a regular function. This is just an ES6 way of writing that same exact thing. I think it looks a lot cleaner though. So if I was down here, I would put, so this add function, instead of doing this, I would just do this. That's it. So see, it's a lot less typing, and especially in React, I think it looks a lot cleaner. Again, this is an ES6 feature. We're using Babel to transpile everything because we get the JSX transpiler in it. So we're already getting that, and React uses ES6 anyway. So I'm kind of using a couple things. I don't know a lot of ES6 though. So if anybody has any suggestions and things that they think are neat in ES6 that they might see, going along, we can always try to add them in. Yeah, so that's just one thing you'll see me do all the time is that. Let's see. Okay, so back to the state. So, because state's going to be how we're changing actual things in here. Well, we have our initial state, but how do we change it from there? What we do is maybe in one of these other functions, when we're calling something, we can update the state. And so what you would call this dot set state. Okay, and that's just, you're going to pass in whatever you want. So you can make it look nice by splitting up the line, and have it all here then, and state 1, and then is whatever we want to change it to, and then you can do the next one and blah blah blah, whatever. Or you can do it all in one line. The nice thing about ES6 is if what this dot dot dot, if that say we have a var that's state 1. equals something. And we were doing that here. Say we were changing this to that. So we were changing, the state of the component, state 1, to state, this variable state 1. What we can do is just get rid of that altogether and just put state 1. And ES6 in React is smart enough. I guess it's the ES6, I think, is smart enough to say, oh, well, I'm updating state 1. I'm updating this state with the variable that's named the same thing. And you can do that with all of them. So you can go down with state 2, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll all work then, as long as the variables are the same. If they're not, then you have to do the and then whatever it is. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, so the reason you use this .set state instead of just changing the state, because if you noticed, we access the state using this .state, whatever the variable is. So why wouldn't we just do this .state whatever equals? Well, the reason is when you do set state, it calls other functions, like the render. So it's going to re-render the page and do some other stuff. And I don't know all the details. I haven't studied it enough to know the order of what gets called. Like components get mounted and dismounted and things like that. And I'm not an expert at this. I'm pretty new. So the reason you do that is just so you make sure you call those things. So you should never really be calling this .state .something equals. Should always be doing this .set state. Now when you call that though, you may think, oh, well, down here then, this state 1 has to equal state 1, right? That's not actually true, though. The reason is because the set state is just saying it will call that on that. So it doesn't mean it's actually finished the function yet, finish that method. Just like if you're familiar with like AJAX requests, you may request something, but it doesn't come back, but your code keeps running. So you have to have like promises or call back or whatever, to catch that. So be careful if you're trying to access it after you set it. Normally you don't do that necessarily. Well, you do. I don't want to say you don't, because you might set something and then want to do some calculations, I guess, maybe. Normally I do everything with the variables first, though. You know what I mean? And then set the states. And if you need to set a state based off another state, I would do it off of these variables instead of like linking the states, because if you're changing the state in the middle of it, you don't know where it's actually at. Again, we wouldn't have to call return here if this function was just setting state. Maybe this is update some stuff. So, and it doesn't make sense, obviously, but so maybe this function just updates stuff. So it may not even return anything. Maybe it just sets a state, and that's how you actually change things. So in the app, we're passing down. Or how do we have this? So to header, we're passing down the this.state. So if we wanted to change that in the header up here that we have, okay, we have. Let's get rid of that. We have to have our render. Every component has to have a render, and your components always have, your renders always should have a return then, because it's going to render something. And then say we're going to do I don't know, span. This dot props. All right, so so it's just going to output a span with that listed in it. It'd be good if we. So how do we change that though? Maybe I want to have on a click. Maybe if we click the span, right? Or maybe make this a div. That'll be a little bit easier to click. No, maybe not, but either way. All right, so maybe we click this div. We want it to change what this value is in here. Okay, so we could. You ever seen like click handlers inside right inside the HTML? Okay, so what is that? So whenever you have an HTML, I haven't done this in so long. I wonder if it looks exactly the same. I think it's like on click or something like that.
Yeah, it's on click.
Okay, is it on click? Okay, so it's the same thing for this then. They do on click. It's capital here though. Equals, and then whatever you want to do. Now, that just feels so wrong, I'm sure people are saying right now. But the thing is, you don't do that in HTML because you can never change that at that point. In here in the React, you can actually change it and stuff. The reason is you're losing this ability in HTML. And this isn't HTML, again, it's actually JavaScript. So you can put whatever. So we could put this dot some function here. So maybe we have update stuff. So we put our function there, and then we have our function, you know, update stuff. And then, so this is going to do, you know, some stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. So what happens is when you click on this div, it'll then call this function, which can then change stuff. Well, how does it change it? Because we can't change it here. Well, what we actually do then is we do this dot props dot the function. So then we go down here, and when we're passing in this, we then also add in, what did I call it? So we do update stuff equals this dot, and maybe it is, you know, maybe it's the update some stuff thing. Maybe it's that function, you know, and this, maybe this actually changes, yeah, because it'll change state 1. So that will actually change it. So what's going on then is this will call that function, that method from the parent component. So that's how you can change. That's how you can change stuff without changing it down like lower level into the component, like in the lower level child component. You change it up top. So that's probably one of the more confusing pieces if you're not used to passing functions around and things too. I don't know what everybody's experience level is with programming. So does that make sense to everybody being able to pass functions and that? Okay. Yeah, functions are just you know, a value you can pass around, or that's an object in JavaScript. Most things are, I think, even if you don't look at it always, except for like the primitives. But functions are objects, and you can pass objects, so you can pass functions. Yeah, so that would be it. You might want, I think you buy. It's been a minute since I wrote some. I think you would do like a bind. You know, this or whatever to it. You can do that kind of stuff if you need to do that. Does everybody know about bind? So it's a basic JavaScript function. Does everybody know about the keyword this?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we're using this already, and I didn't even ask, you know. So this refers to whatever the enclosing, you know, scope was, or function scope normally. But in the parent, in the browser, so it's normally window by default, or whatever the global is if you're not in a browser. But normally it goes to global. If you just call this and you're not in anything, it'll return the window. If you're inside a function, you know, it'll return that function, the reference to that function, and inside that, you know, the objects and things like that. So the thing is, when you're passing these functions down through them, the this may not be where you want it to be, so you may need to do a bind.this. Don't always. You don't always. Depends on what you're actually doing with the function. And so if you get into an instance where you're calling in the function like this, so if we go, where was that at? So if we do this dot something, I don't know. Actually, you wouldn't want to bind this one anyway because you're calling this dot set state. But if you wanted to set state on that other one, you know, on the actual header one instead, you would have to bind it. We wouldn't actually want to bind that one though, I don't think. But so that can get a little confusing. What makes it easier though is if you just take this props and then the function and move that up here. You know, you can call it here, so you can still do stuff over here and do other things in here and still call it, and then you can just use this one, the local one too. So you can keep it local. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you need to do like more than one thing with information, with the data you're passing back and forth or passing down. Sometimes that makes, like if you're doing forms, you need to do this sometimes, depending on like if you're doing like decimal places. There's some weird tricks and things. I don't know if that's the correct way to do it. Again, I've only been doing React for a little bit. So we would call, update stuff. And then the update stuff one would actually call the parent, the prop that was passed down. Or it was update some stuff, or whatever it was. I think it was some stuff. So yeah, so any questions about that? Did I confuse everybody?
Nope.
All right. This all probably seems very confusing anyway, even if you're saying, yeah, you got it, because I know when I first did it, it was very, very confusing, and the only way to get this is to just jump in and start making stuff with it. There is no, I mean, that's true in all programming, but with this stuff, with JavaScript in general, I think you just have to get in here because there's some weird stuff. But I think React is like really, really pretty. If you look at this, it looks really, really, really nice. Real quick, I can. Shoot. The other buffer. If I show you, let me show you something from one of my other projects, a slightly bigger thing here. Let's do the. All right, so. So I have my linter right in my editor, as you saw right there. So if you have the option, we're using ESLint, which will go over all the JavaScript files and let you know if you have any errors that it can catch, like if you had a comma somewhere you're not supposed to, or if you're missing something. Mostly it's typo stuff, or like it checks other things too, like if you're using, it'll sometimes guess like some things, but most of it's like just syntax errors. Not really like, obviously it's not going to catch logical errors. At least I don't think there's any logical errors it catches. But here's some React stuff. Slightly different because I'm using this in Rails. So I'm not using like the imports and all that because I'm using the Rails asset pipeline. But we have our get initial state. You have our prop types up here. We have our create class, and then this is components will receive props. This is doing some funny stuff because I'm updating a lot of different fields. But we just have all these functions here, all these methods here, and as you see, we have different. This is another component, another file, input area that I made up, and I'm just passing in all these. So basically, this generates these input fields for me, and so I'm just using that to generate all this stuff. See how simple it is? It's like really nice and clean. It looks very pretty. Everything's nice and all that, and you can call functions inside of, like I'm formatting the currency, like I have util library that I made up that I format the currency, and doing some stuff. And I'm using Bootstrap on this. We use it for our work site. So same thing. Like you can pass in classes and stuff, and I'm doing some stuff. But it looks really pretty. It's just the HTML. You're like just looking at HTML mostly. You know what I mean? Like up here you got your JavaScript, but then you got, even though it's not HTML, it looks like to our minds. You know what I mean? The components that HTML is. Like you have a div. Well, you understand that. I can understand. I can put my head around an input area. And you just name all these things something, all the props something that makes sense. Be descriptive is probably always a good. Don't use like A's as variables. Yeah, stupid questions are welcome. Alonzo, go ahead. Alonzo has a question, so. Well, while he's, I guess, typing it up probably. So you're trying to. So Alonzo says, so let's say we were trying to make the site now. Yep. Go on. I probably should close out of this though, because that's production code. Now, how would you, for example, create the index and maybe the sidebar or nav bar? and the second page. So the different pages we're going to do through the HTML template and generator, which is in the Webpack. So let me address that little tiny portion real quick again. So if you go to Webpack config.js, and you go to plugins, you can just come in here and say it says new HTML Webpack plugin, and then pick a template if you want to use one, and then put a title for it, and then do @mount_id. @mount_id just gives us somewhere to attach the React, which I haven't showed you how to do that part yet, because that's like a real simple part, and already pretty much you can just copy what we have. So that's that one little tiny piece. For the actual like sidebars and things, let's go ahead and make one, actually. So we have the folder structure. I don't know if you're on here earlier, Alonzo. Is we have the apps, the app folder, which is where our source is. So the other folders we can ignore for right now. And so what we have in the app folder is another components folder, which is where I'm making up individual components. I like to try to split it up as much as I can. I've started to splitting it up into like almost every component is like their own file, unless it just doesn't make sense. Maybe it's like a library of utilities, like maybe you're making forms and it's a whole bunch of, maybe that doesn't make sense to split them up. Maybe it does if they're real long though. But so let's make a component. So we're going to make app components, and then let's see, sidebar. All right, sidebar. Well, so you're normally going to use capital. So, and then you're going to put .jsx on the file because we're going to be putting JSX in it. So I just found that you can use .js, but it's just telling us, hey, there's JSX in here, and we can use that. So we're going to make a new file then, and in here you're just going to do the same thing. You can just do var. Again, if we want to do the other way, we can do. I got to look it up. What was it? What is it? I don't remember what it was. Hold on. Yeah. All right. So you can just copy this. So export default is just saying export this as the default piece. That's a default export thing. So I don't know how much you guys know about modules. I don't really feel like getting into that. It's not that hard. You can look it up. And then you just name this the same thing. So it'd be sidebar extends React component, which means we need to import React from React. Okay, so the import React, you need to put that in there. That's going to import, that React piece, that React object from the React library, which is we have installed already and set up. I did all that for you all with the Webpack stuff, and you can go through the Webpack file and look at and the package.json and see exactly where that's coming from. If you go into node modules, that's where it's actually located. But it's just pulling. You don't really need to do all that. And then so then we have that, and then we can come in here and just make up whatever we want. So every one needs a render. Give me 1 sec real quick here. Sorry. I'm going to have to wrap this actually up probably relatively soon. But we can do another one probably tomorrow or something. Maybe not. What's tomorrow? Tuesday?
Yep, Tuesday.
If everybody can, we'll see what everybody's schedule looks like. But real quick, so what you're going to want to do is go ahead and do your render right off the bat whenever you make one of these. And then do your return. Same thing. I do that right away just so I know. Then I'm going to put a div. Normally I put a div or whatever, and then just start filling out your HTML. Put your div. Bam. You need one parent component, so make that your div maybe. Or it could be a side or whatever. It doesn't matter. And then if you want to start putting stuff in here, h1 and nada, whatever. And then if you want to put other components, you can. Like if we had one that was links offsite, maybe it had like offsite links for us, and you just call that component, and that component would then fill in here. Maybe that's in a different file, and you just build them up like this. Very, very easy. And then when you're done that, what you do is in the index. So see, we have the index.jsx. You would make up one for that page, so it would be whatever, and then you would just pretty much copy this whole thing right here. You would do the import React DOM. That's for this DOM, React DOM.render right here. So you need that, and then import whatever that is. So it would be, if we did a, what is this? So if we did, I don't know, would we necessarily want to make a sidebar page, but you'd import sidebar from, and then you do /components/sidebar.jsx. And then you do your React DOM here, and you'd put your, you'd put sidebar here, and then remember in the Webpack config, I had that app, the mount ID or whatever it was called. That's all that is right here. Is you're just picking that ID and attaching to it. That's automatically generated by the HTML, and you're good to go. Does that explain what you're looking for, Alonzo? Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah, it's that simple. Once you start getting into more complex stuff, yes, you're moving pieces around when you're doing different functions and things, but I think for most of the site we can get away without it, and you can just pass down fake props for now. Like if we want to just maybe have an object at the top level, because we don't have the API down, that we can communicate with yet, maybe we just make a JSON file, or just up at the top put an object, JavaScript object, and put some dummy values in, and that'll propagate down, and we can play around with that. And because it's real easy to pull that back out later. And if we always try to put your state up as high as possible, so if you have a whole bunch of components, so if you have, you have in the sidebar, maybe you had, the links off site, maybe that was, maybe there was a whole bunch, I don't know, or maybe inside the links off site you had, you had a whole bunch more links off site. Maybe each had their own link off site, and that had, more components inside of it. Maybe we have some graphics in there, whatever, I don't know, and it keeps cascading down. Just pass down props as far as don't pass down, don't have state in each one that you don't need. If you don't have state, it can do a little bit faster stuff. You can actually use stateless function components, and if you go to this right here, I just posted in the chat. That's the one of the updates for the 0.14 release of React. And if you go down I think I already gave you the point on there, but if it doesn't scroll down for you, the stateless functional components, you can see they're using a little bit different syntax there, but it's really simple. They're using the fat arrow function syntax, which real quick I'll show you on here. It's just var, your function name, whatever, and then equals, and normally you'd have your function name, but on here you're not. You're just gonna have your variables, your parameters, b, c, whatever, whatever it is, and then you have your fat arrow, and then now that's your function. There's some scope things with that. I'm not 100%. I haven't really took an ES6 course or read a book, so I'm just kind of going off a little bit I've picked up here and there. I've been meaning to get more into it, but I think there's some. I think this doesn't work in that, but you're not using this or something. I think you can just use the props, right? Yeah, the props you can use right off the bat. So you would just use whatever you would use a. You wouldn't call props.a. You would just call a, and a would equal whatever this is right here. You wouldn't have to call this.props or anything, and so it's just going to equal that in it. I haven't used that, but it's something I've been looking at. So most of the material online is kind of outdated because React's been moving really fast. So the material I learned was a little bit older, and they didn't talk about stateless functional components. But I was looking it up the other day, and it looks really cool. So I'm going to probably start using it. So if you want to look at that page, and then there's some. The React documentation is really good if you go there. If you want to, I thought I had. Here's some other documents on the component on the different create class and the and the actual class extends. you go to any of those, I just sent a couple more links. You can read up, but the React docs are really the best thing to look at. And then, quick Google search or ask me, and I'll work through it with you if I don't know the answer. But I mean, if you want to just play around with it at first, it's really easy. So the only thing was when you're doing the index page, just remember you gotta have the React DOM.render, and you call your main app or whatever that main page one is. So this could be called page 2, or it could be called contacts. And maybe that's the contacts page, you know what I mean? That's just, it's self-contained. And then you just do documents.getElementID by ID, and then whatever the ID you set for that page in the Webpack config.js. Any questions?
No.
All right, we covered a lot of material.
Yep.
And I didn't touch on a lot of things because there's there's only so much time. And so we can do another one of these and go in more maybe after everybody's had some time to play around with it. There's going to be things that I just didn't think of, and there's like there's like life cycles to the state, and you can do like components will mount and things like that. But I don't think we're going to need them for this project, at least anybody that's just kind of working on static pages especially. So if you want to start knocking static pages out, you very well could with what I've given you. You know what I mean? You don't need anything else. You can just take a look at the example I have in there. There's one page, basically, it's the index page. Just look at how it's made. You have to look at the Webpack config just to see how the template was made. Make another one of those. You pretty much just copy that one and kind of just tweak it. And you can search if you want to know how to actually what the different values are for things and this, that, and the other. Go to the package.json and look up what these things are, like the loaders and all this. So that one is the HTML Webpack plugin and the Webpack template. So these two things are what's doing the generation. So the plugin's the actual plugin piece, and the template gives us kind of a generic index template. So you can look at those two. Mostly probably going to use the plugin part. You can write your own templates for it too to kind of be a little bit more customized, but you can really do everything in React. Oh, one more thing. You can do inline styles in React, but you can also then just import your style sheet. And I think you're going to have to look it up because look it up in the Webpack docs, but I think it's just import. And then, or require, it might be require, I can't remember, but it might be like require. But I think you can use either style because import is the ES6 style and require is the common JS style. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with modules at all. Does anybody have module experience working with modules?
No modules.
Okay, all right. So that's like the most important thing you guys could learn.
Okay.
You may even do it a little bit and not know, but CommonJS is one way, and normally they do require, I think it is, and then so you could do this, and it's require, and then you do whatever your CSS file is or SCSS, whatever it is. So you would it's already going to point to apps, so we might have a styles folder, and then whatever So yeah, so that's how you would do import CSS, and you don't even need to add it into an HTML file. And that might be a little off. You might just double check on the doc just to make sure I'm giving you the right import or require, because I think you can use either one. But I think if we're going to pick one, we might as well just use it. So I think the ES6, because that's going to be the standard, might be the better way to go. But the CommonJS one is a real popular one. So like that require, that's a very familiar one to people. So I mean, if we probably just want to settle on which one we want to use, and then just pick. And you can look up the docs. If you want to learn more about ES6, I recommend going to the Babel transpiler website. Trying to see what it is. If you just search Babel, it's babeljs.io. So
js.io.
I think I typed it right. Yeah. So, and they have introductory stuff on ES6, and Babel's really a lot bigger than just ES6, but it's what we're using to transpile. It's called ES 2015 now, but it's also what we use to transpile the JSX. And I had to configure setting up all this. You don't want to have to set it up your first time by yourself. So it's nice, to have just kind of play around in our environment. Remember, if you mess something up, we're using Git. You don't have to push it or commit it. If you have Git questions, just let me know. I can probably walk you through anything, even if you blew up all the work you probably just did. As long as it's committed at some point, I can probably get it back. Unless you did some crazy stuff. So. But that's wonderful powers to get. So does anybody have any questions or things they think they might need to know before I let everybody go?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if you just hit me up on the Slack chat, and I'll get back to you relatively quickly. I try to check periodically throughout the day. I may not always be able to code right when I check because I might be on my phone or I might be working or something where I can't actually pull off of this what I'm doing. But I'll at least let you know. I'll get to you and I'll try to help out. Again, I'm not an expert. I've only been doing React for a month or two. Of course, I just implemented it. We just started using it at work because I just said I'm using it. So, but that's the best way to learn. That's actually how I figured out a lot of the stuff is just doing it at work. So, yeah, if you just take these, and if you go to the React website, again, I'll post I gave the link that had the actual. I think it had pieces of it, but if you go to the main site, it has examples, especially in the older style that I like. On the very front page, it tells you how to make components. It tells you how to make stateful components, how to make a whole application just in a small little box, using plugins, all kind of things, stuff I don't even know. And there's little examples right there on the very first page. And the getting started there is really good. Don't worry about having to set it up. You already really have it set up. Plus, you could, you just work off what we have. Setting it up probably took me longer than it took me to learn React. And granted, I don't know all the pieces of React yet. React's very small, though. It's just a library. It's not actually a framework. So, all right. So, unless anybody has questions, I'm going to hop off here. I gotta do some things real quick.
Okay.
So I didn't know we kind of. I wanted to get started a little bit earlier, but I didn't get started until about 8. And then I didn't think we were going to be more than an hour, but I guess it makes sense. And we can always do another one of these. And if we want to do pair programming and all that, I think we should probably work together in maybe little tiny teams, and we can change up who's working with who. And it doesn't have to be just 2 people; it could be 3 people or 4 people, or it could just be 2 people. That's fine too, and we can switch off or if people, we should probably do code reviews, things like that, kind of, because everybody's not used to, everybody might have a different thing they've done, and so it might be good to be, hey, why did you do this that way, and you might learn something, or the person that did it might say, oh no, you know what, maybe that doesn't make sense, or maybe the person asking the question may learn something. Yeah. So I think all those could be very valuable. So yeah. Definitely do some code review. If we want to do pair programming, we can do some different setups. We can do something like this because I think you can give control of your screen over. If not, there's other stuff like TeamViewer. There's Tmux and different things if you use Mac or Linux. It might work on Windows. I don't know. If anybody has any problems, though, just let me know. I'm popping off. And this is recorded. I'll post the link up in the chat in the Slack room so everybody who wasn't here can watch, or so you can rewatch.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.